Kyle Fletcher has returned and turned on Takeshita. MJF has won back the AEW World Championship, and Kevin Knight has turned heel. That and so much more as we go over AEW Double or Nothing. We open up the night with FTR versus Christian Cage and Adam Copeland in an I Quit match for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. Cope would suplex Dax onto a ladder. Cash would wrap a chair around Cope's neck and would sling him into the ring post. Cage would use pliers on Dax's nose and Cash's cog. FTR would hit Cope with a spike piledriver onto the announce table. FTR would put a center block on Cage's injured wrist and would hit the block with a steel chair, and Cage would say, "I banged your mother." It seems like the numbers are too much for Cage and Cope, but out comes a returning Beth to even the score, but she is immediately thrown right into the steel steps. Dax would light a table on fire. Stokely would be holding Beth, but as Cash would dive, Beth moves out of the way and Stokely and Cash would go through the flaming table. Dax would go for a concerto on Cope, but Beth would low blow him. Cage would put Dax into the Scorpion Deathlock, and Cope would tell Beth to get something, and she brings out none other than Spike, and Cope would sink Spike into Dax's head, and he has no other choice but to say, "I quit." And now Adam Copeland and Christian Cage are the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. This is the first time since 2001 that Cage and Copeland are Tag Team Champions together. What a moment for them, and what an opening match for Double or Nothing. Next up is Konosuke Takeshita versus Kazuchika Okada for the AEW International Championship. Takeshita would hit the bastard driver and the German suplex, but Okada would get straight up with a drop kick. Okada would hit a Rainmaker on the apron and Takeshita lands right on his neck, and Okada makes it worse with a DDT on the outside. Okada would look for a pile driver, but Don Callis would stop it. Don's trying to keep the family in order. The whole house is mad, but Takeshita would hit a brain buster on the outside not too long after, and Don is livid. Okada would go for the Rainmaker, but Takeshita would reverse it into a Blue Thunder Bomb. Takeshita would go for the power drive knee, but Okada catches him with a drop kick, but Takeshita still hits the power drive knee anyway, but Okada kicks out at one. But ultimately, Takeshita would hit the Raging Fire, and he would finally put Okada away and win the International Championship. Fantastic match. After the match, the family would be in the ring, and it looks like the family's gonna jump him, but out comes a returning Kyle Fletcher, which popped me right out of my chair. I missed the Proto Star. Kyle would square up against Okada, defending Takeshita, and after the Donk House family backs off, Kyle Fletcher would hug Takeshita, and he would raise his hand, but he pulls a Samoa Joe and clotheslines him, and Kyle would hit him with a brain buster, and Kyle would hit Takeshita with the International Championship. Proto Shida is dead, and now Takeshita has been kicked out of the Don Callis family. Next up is Athena versus Mina Shirakawa in the quarterfinals of the Women's Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Athena would dropkick Mina into the barricade board. Mina would hit a nasty stomp on Athena's knee, and Mina would lock in a figure four to weaken the knee even more, and ultimately Athena would hit the O-face to win the match and advance in the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. I don't think anybody can stop Athena. Mina couldn't do it, and Athena had one knee almost the whole match. Next up is Jon Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly for the AEW Continental Championship. Kyle would kick Moxley against the ring post, but Moxley would move out of the way and Kyle would kick the ring post. Kyle would try and kick Moxley, but the damage has been done, and now Moxley smells blood in the water. Moxley would rake Kyle's back and he bites his eye. Kyle would lock in an ankle lock, which was Moxley's kryptonite back in October and November of last year, but this isn't the same Jon Moxley, and he doesn't tap, but Moxley would put an ankle lock in himself. Kyle tries to crawl to the ropes, but he's stuck and he's forced to tap, and Jon Moxley has conquered his past demon and retained the Continental Championship. After the match, Moxley and Kyle would shake hands, showing each other respect after the many battles they've had over the last few months. Great match. These two never miss together. Next up is Will Ospreay versus Samoa Joe in the quarterfinals of the Men's Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Before the match can even start, Ospreay would hit Joe with an Oz Cutter. Joe would sling Ospreay neck first into the barricade. Ospreay would go for another Oz Cutter, but Joe would just walk away. Ospreay would hit Joe with the Styles Clash. Joe would have the Coquina Clutch in, and it seems like Ospreay is fading. The ref drops the hand 2 times, but the last time Ospreay would grab the ropes. Ospreay would hit the hidden blade, but Joe would kick out at 1. Ospreay would immediately hit another hidden blade to the back of his head, and he's able to put down Samoa Joe to win the match and advance in the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Great match between these two. Ospreay looks more than ready for the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, and more than ready for the AEW World Championship. Next up is Swerve Strikland versus Bandido in the quarterfinals of the Men's Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Swerve would German suplex Bandido into the top turnbuckle. Bandido would boost Swerve onto his shoulders, and Swerve would hit the house call. Bandido would hit Swerve with a Poison Rana off the apron onto the outside. Bandido would hit the 21-plex, but Bandido couldn't hold the bridge because of his neck. Bandido would go for the 21-plex, but Swerve would catch him and hit him with a vertebraker, and ultimately Swerve would hit the house call to put away Bandido and advance in the Owen Hart Hart Foundation tournament. And I don't know about you, but something tells me maybe the last two winners of the last two matches will meet each other in the finals of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, where they had their first match together. Next up is Thekla versus Hikaru Shida versus Jamie Hayter versus Kris Statlander in a fatal 4-way for the AEW Women's World Championship. Jamie Hayter would hit the Haterade, but Shida would break up the pin, and tension would finally explode, and Shida and Statlander would brawl onto the outside. Statlander would hit Sunday Night Fever, but Shida would hit Statlander with a kendo stick. But ultimately, Thekla would hit the curb stomp to retain her AEW Women's World Championship. Definitely not who I thought was going to win, and not the person I wanted to win, but nonetheless, this was a pretty good match. Next up is Stadium Stampede. The Demand roll up in Akatsuki jerseys. Jericho's team gets a badass action movie intro with The Devil's Dance by Metallica playing. Jack Perry would hit Mark Davis with a full tank from a vacuum cleaner. The Hurt Syndicate and the Demand would be brawling backstage, and Leo Rush will be backstage with them, and he jumps on the back of Toa Leon. The Bucks and the Dogs would be at the merchandise stand, and the Bucks would super kick Clark Connors onto the escalator, and as he's getting a ride up the escalator, Andrade is taking pictures with the ladies, but Luchasaurus catches Andrade by surprise with a blonde wig. Jack Perry and Mark Davis will be in catering, and the Invincible Dude is back there, and he instantly gets dropped. Kenny would throw Andrade into Santam Singh, and he's pissed, and this causes a huge food fight with everyone. Ricochet will be hitting Jericho with a tennis racket, but Jericho opens a door, and behind the door is Luther, and he gives Jericho a comically large tennis racket, and he beats Ricochet with it. Outside, Mark Davis would have bandages over his eyes, and he finds a golf cart, but as he finds it, Jack Perry nearly runs him over with his fucking bus. Omega would hit the one-winged angel on Andrade through a table on the outside, and Jericho would hit the line salt to win Stadium Stampede. Just pure chaos and fun. All the Stadium Stampede and Anarchy in the Arena matches never miss. I still love last year's Anarchy in the Arena match more, but this was absolutely fun. And we move on to the main event, MJF versus Darby Allin for the AEW World Championship, hair versus title. MJF walks out looking a bit shaken, especially when he sees the Clippers on the table. Darby Allin will be underground New York with the Ninja Turtles. Darby Allin would go for a suicide dive, but MJF would move out of the way and Darby Allin lands right on his neck. That shit looked fucking nasty. MJF would powerbomb Darby on the apron. Darby would go for the coffin drop on the apron, but MJF moves out of the way and Darby hits the apron. MJF would package piledriver Darby onto the steel steps. Darby would choke out MJF on the stage, and he would put MJF on a table. Darby would be on top of the stage, and he hits the bang bang for Mick Foley, and he would hit the coffin drop off the top of the stage. Darby must have hit his head, because he would be bleeding from the back of his head. Darby would lock in the Scorpion Deathlock, but the fatigue and blood loss kicks in, and Darby passes out, and MJF smiles like only the devil could. Darby would go for the coffin drop, but MJF trips him on the top rope, and MJF would hit an avalanche tombstone piledriver. He would hit the headlock takeover to win the match and win back the AEW World Championship. It was only a matter of time until the wheels fell off on Darby, but what a reign he had in such a short amount of time. This reign will be remembered for years to come, but for right now, MJF is a 3-time AEW World Champion. And just like he did at Revolution, MJF celebrates on top of his opponent while on a stretcher. But Kevin Knight would come out to make the save for Darby Allin, but Kevin snaps and he hits the UFO splash onto Darby Allin, and he pushes Darby off the stretcher, all the while in some Timbs. The show ends with Kevin Knight turning heel. Why would he do this? We'll just have to wait and find out. And that was AEW Double or Nothing. Holy shit, what a fucking show. Easily pay-per-view of the year material right here. Top to bottom, this was just amazing. There was not a bad match in sight. The lowest match on this card is probably a 3.5, and if your lowest match is a 3.5, you're doing something right. And it blew by. It was so much fun, and the crowd all night was electric. Dare I say, they deserve an all-in one year? But just wonderful stuff from AEW as always. We can always count on AEW to give us something good, because WWE isn't gonna give it to us. But let me know what you all think of Double or Nothing in the comments. Did you love it like I did? Let me know. Most importantly, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I'll make more silly videos like this in the future, so stop on by when the time comes. But until then, be careful.